Hey everybody, it's Jason Will. Just want to take a quick second to remind you that my Impact Agent University conference is happening this April 11th and 12th, 2019 in New Orleans, Louisiana. Get your tickets at impactagentuniversity.com and use promo code JASON10 for a 10% discount off your tickets. Ready? Ready to rock and roll? Is that action? All right. Okay.
That's right.
All right.
Absolutely. Go. Go.
Hello everybody, it's Jason Will with
Go.
This is a real estate podcast, but we talk about leadership, personal growth, and becoming the best version of yourself. Leadership, check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Growth, best version of yourself.
Go.
So this is a real estate podcast. Matt Johnson, welcome to the Impact Agent Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing great. Take a couple minutes and introduce yourself to our audience.
Yeah, so most people might know me from the Real Estate Uncensored podcast, which I've hosted for a few years with my amazing and certifiably insane co-host, Greg McDaniel. You might have seen a lot of Greg's live calling shows where he actually makes prospecting calls cold on Facebook. So that's the person I've been co-hosting the show with. We do a ton of live video. We're actually on live every single week on Fridays on Facebook, interviewing some of the top real estate influencers, coaches, and insiders. And then behind the scenes, Greg and I lead kind of an informal team of folks who have joined up with eXp Realty through us and just kind of lead and guide and help mentor those folks onto success. And then behind the scenes, I also produce a lot of podcasts for other real estate leaders like Lars Hedenberg and Michael Hellickson's Club Wealth, Greg Harrelson, and some others that you might know the names of. So that is a little background on me.
You're just only slightly busy. Got a couple things going on.
I'm working. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm working on getting less busy and more focused. That's been my journey over the last 2 years, basically. So yes, there, at one point I looked up and realized I was in 4 startup businesses and I'm like, okay, this has to change.
Yeah. So I just got back from a mastermind with Sharon, who was talking about if you want exponential growth, you need singularity of focus. And like, agree. I'm all over the map. So I'm trying to get some tunnel vision in that regard as well. I love the podcast that you do, and Greg Harrelson's is one that I recommend all the time as well. So those are really, really well done with great topics. But tell the audience how kind of we connected and a little bit about what we hope to talk about today.
Yeah. So really, I think one of the things that Greg and I find a lot is that, the people in your audience have the same challenges as the folks in our audience, which is they're being told to do a lot of things. And you mentioned the singularity of focus. It's really tough to maintain that level of focus when you get nothing but a steady stream diet of do this, do that. You need to be on these 17 social media platforms because you've got to be everywhere that anybody that you could potentially work with might be on. And so I think agents are just deluged with, they're drowning in a sea of options and information, and they don't have a lot of wisdom and focus. And so one of the things that Greg and I talk about on the show is getting back, kind of moving away from this kind of transactional mindset of only caring about people when they're in the phase of buying and selling real estate and caring about them all the time, right? Moving to more of a relationship focused business. And then the challenge just becomes, okay, well, if you shift to a relationship kind of business, how does it grow, and how do you have enough conversations with enough people so you uncover those opportunities of people who are in the buying and selling phase, and what happens from there? So one of the things we wanted to talk about today is just how do you use, let's say, like one platform, one method, one strategy, like live video on Facebook, for example. How can we use that to connect and build those relationships with people so that they care about us and we care about them, and we're in communication, whether they're buying or selling real estate right this second or not?
Yeah, I love that. I do feel like that is where a lot of people are at. They're just in that paralysis by analysis. They're drowning. They're overwhelmed. The other excuse I get is I just don't have the time. And I feel like you can solve that with very singular answer in that if you don't have time, you're not making it a priority.
Yeah. And what you said is 100% true. Anytime that we find ourselves saying, I don't have the time, what that really means is I have too many goals, and I prefer to maintain the fantasy that I might hit some of them rather than focus on one and really go all out and commit and knock it out. And then, so I think one of the things and because I have a coach myself, right? I have a business coach that I meet with every week. One of the things that he's helped me with the most over the last year has been cutting a deal with myself. I don't have to do everything right now. Everything doesn't have to be done at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And I definitely don't have to do and focus on multiple things at once. Like that is actually very hurtful, right? I don't make as much progress as I could. So how do you handle that when you say, okay, well, I'm only going to focus on one thing, but my business needs 5 things fixed in it. Mm-hmm. Well, you have to cut a deal with yourself on the other 4. You say, okay, I'm going to put blinders on for a while. And I'm only going to focus on one thing. And I'm just going to have to cut a deal with myself to not worry about those other 4 things for a while until I get the one thing taken care of. And then I can move on to those other things. And it's a big challenge for anyone that's ambitious or just wants to be more successful in life, because you're always going to have 5 different ways to go. And you're always going to have that feeling that you should be doing all 5 of them at once. And that's the problem, is then we end up making a little bit of progress in 5 different directions instead of massive progress in any one direction.
What would you say to the agent out there that is contemplating the ROI? So they're not overwhelmed, they're slightly interested, but they're not committed to, doing a consistent Facebook Live because they're just contemplating the ROI.
Yeah. Okay. So the ROI conversation goes like this. You don't need as many people as you think you do in your database to have a successful real estate career. Because the statistic is for every 100 people in your database, there's 12 deals living in there through repeat and referral business, which of course we're wildly missing out on 99% of those.
Yep.
But there's a reason that we're missing out on them. And it's because we're not in communication. We're not in relationship with those people in any meaningful way. Right. So out of those 100 people, maybe we accidentally bump into one of them at the grocery store and find out they're looking for a house. And maybe we do a deal with 1 out of those 100. Well, that's 11 deals we missed out on this year. We're missing out on them because we're not in communication with them. So the ROI of getting in communication with more people is that you actually need a lot fewer people in your database, but you need more relationships. Here's the good news about social media. The liberating thing about social media is it allows you to build relationships a lot more easily with a larger number of people, right? So if all you had was your phone and all it did was make outbound phone calls, we've figured out through studying tribes and through studying humans that we can maintain good relationships with about 150 people. Interesting side note, that's also right about the level that most churches grow to.
Right.
There's something about that number. There's something about that number of 150. It's deeply ingrained in us as a human being that's about how many relationships we can have before it gets too big to maintain. So most people think of that and they go, well, database of 150 people is not enough. And they're probably right if you want to make 6 figures in real estate. So how do you maintain relationships with 500 or 1,000 people? Well, you need to give them a way to interact with you without you having to pick up the phone and call them. Because it's too many people to call. So the reason why you'd want to invest in something like, let's say, live video, or even just getting more active on a platform like Facebook, is it gives you a way to talk to more people and be in communication and in relationship with more people than if all you could do is pick up the phone and call them. So again, going back to the liberating thing about social media is live video gives you a chance to, you do one thing, you send out one form of communication, but hundreds, maybe even thousands of people can consume that and feel like they have a relationship with you, even though you didn't have to pick up the phone and call.
I think that's a very compelling argument. I was just on a call with a potential seller this morning and just talking about boosted ads and the fact that, we used to send, the old school method was we would send 100 postcards, just listed postcards in a half-mile radius. But now we can do a boosted ad and reach 3, 5, sometimes even 10,000 people, depending on the suburb that we're targeting. So it's really undeniable. And then the other thing is that when you connect with these people, you're building rapport, even though you don't even know them. So sometimes you'll sit down at an appointment and go, I just see your Facebook Live videos and I feel like I know you. Yep. So you're giving yourself a leg up. All right, so let's jump into your 6 different types of live content. So break it down for us.
Okay. So first one's an easy one. It's a market update, right? I wouldn't do these too often. The people that care the most about this are going to be the people who are in that buying and selling phase or very close to it, right?
Right.
So the reason why you would do a market update is not because you expect everyone that you're connected to watch or listen. In fact, they're not. The reason you would do a market update video or a live video on something like a Facebook platform would be this. you want to pay very close attention to who's paying attention to that video, because that tells you something about them. It tells you, hey, if they're interested in real estate, why are they interested? Nobody cares about market updates if they're not thinking about buying and selling. Now, they may not be thinking about buying until next year, but they're thinking, right? So you want to pay attention to who is watching or interacting or commenting on those types of videos, because that's your clue. Hey, this is someone that I should reach out to and message, and maybe set up a phone call to see what's going on in their life that's got them thinking about real estate. So that's number one. Market update.
Giving them permission to reach out via Facebook Messenger to the people that are watching the video.
100%. If you do a market update and you're talking about stats on the area and you see who comments and you see who watches it, absolutely follow up on that with personal messages. Thank them for watching and just offer to help. That's it.
And the frequency you're recommending is once a month?
For a market update? Yeah. Once a month. Okay. All
right, let's go to number 2.
Okay. So number 2 would be buyer and seller questions, right? So these are so taking a question that a real client or a real prospect asks you, and then turning it around, depersonalizing it, stripping out any personal details or anything like that, and just say, hey, let's say going on Facebook Live and just saying, hey, a client just asked me this today, right? So they were asking me about, what is escrow, right? What does that mean when I put money in escrow? So I just wanted to answer that, right? So you just answer the question, thank everyone for watching, let people know how they can reach out, dive off, right? So 2-3 minutes, no big deal. It's something you already know off the top of your head anyway. These are already questions that are coming up in the flow of doing your business. So just take it public, right? Take things that are normally behind the scenes, common questions that you're already answering, and just make them public.
Now, I know we're trying to have this singularity of focus, this kind of theme for our podcast talk today. But if somebody had a little bit of extra inventory in, their capacity, would you recommend that they download these videos and put them on a YouTube channel?
Yes. That is, I would say there's a very small sweet spot where I think most agents fall into that would actually be good advice for. It's a very small sweet spot. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Because most of the listening audience is going to be at the point where they need to exclusively focus on just producing the content and not worrying about trying to get it on other platforms. And then you've got the people that are already successful enough that they've overshot that sweet spot where they have an assistant. And if you have an assistant, even if it's a $5 an hour virtual assistant in the Philippines, that's who should be doing that, not the agent. So it's not that it's not a great idea. It is, but there's a very small sweet spot of agents who should be doing it themselves. Most agents either shouldn't be worrying about it or should be paying somebody else to do it. And the goal is to get to that point as quickly as possible where you have an assistant who's doing something like that for you, so you're not doing it, because that's the bottom line is that's $12 to $15 an hour work. And if you're doing real estate right, you make way more per hour.
Excellent point. All right, let's go to number 3.
Okay, so number 3 is community events. And this is, to me, there's no limit on how much you can do this, because you're talking about things that people care about regardless of whether they're in the buying or selling phase or not. So community events, these could be just the no-brainers, the big concerts or sporting events that are coming to town. They could be as small as the nonprofit animal shelter around the corner doing an adoption drive for puppies, right? So it can be super big or super small. You can also make it super specific, right? So I used to live in a city in California called Temecula, and there was a neighborhood within Temecula called Harveston. It was all based around this huge man-made lake, and it had all these really nice houses and townhomes around that lake. That was a prime ground, and an enterprising agent had set up a Facebook group for that neighborhood that had 900 members. And the problem is all she did with it was post her open houses.
Right.
She had this incredible asset of people who all cared about what was going on in that community, super, super hyper local. And she probably had enough business of people moving in and out of that neighborhood that she could have made a very, very good living just by capturing 20 or 30% of those buyers and sellers moving out of that one big neighborhood, and completely letting that asset go and not maximizing it by not talking about the things that people care about, right? So you can go really, really specific all the way down to the neighborhood level.
I love that.
Success and mindset. So this is the Brendan Burchard, Tony Robbins type of content, right? Stuff that just makes people feel good, gives them a little hit of motivation, kind of share what's on your mind, what you're doing to succeed, maybe something about your habits or what you're working on, your diet, your exercise plan, just anything that kind of falls into that motivational speaker success kind of thing. People eat that stuff up. My co-host for quite a while did a Mornings with McDaniel, where every morning on Facebook, he would just hop on and talk about the latest self-development, personal development article that he had read. All he did was just, he went out and he took the stuff that he was just reading for himself, and he just hopped up on video and just kind of spit it out on camera and said, hey, this is what I'm reading right now. All right, let's point number 1, point number 2, point number 3. Here's what I like about it. Here's where I agree. Here's what I'm going to apply to my life. So super simple.
Yeah. And I think to me, this is one of the most important ones. In terms of engagement, in terms of people sharing it, commenting on it, I think if we, just jumping back to number 3, that's obviously a really popular one, especially if you're tagging businesses that are around the community event. You're tagging because a lot of cities have their own Facebook page. So if you're tagging those cities in the post, a lot of times the city will share it. But this is the kind of stuff, this is the good stuff to me. Especially if you can be super transparent and super authentic. But I also think this is like one of the last ones agents typically feel comfortable doing, but it can be the most powerful. When you just put yourself out there in a vulnerable state, whether you're going through something really personal, struggling with something, and you just become relatable.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because there's a great story. We had a gal on that some people in the audience might be familiar with, Sarah Johnston, up in Calgary. Mm-hmm. And she had an Instagram account, and, she just through efforts over a couple of years, she built that up to a few thousand. Not anything outrageous. One day she had, I think, 3 deals fall through all in one day, fall out of escrow, and just the whole deal just blew apart. So she's frustrated and upset and stuff like that. And she just hops on Instagram and takes a short video of her, I think, just kind of dancing it off. Basically like, hey, I decided I'm going to grab a glass of wine. I'm just going to dance it off. It was this ridiculous little throwaway kind of 60-second video of her dancing in her apartment to like get her mind off of the crap. Her Instagram account blows up. Right. Of course, a bunch of agents follow her. A bunch of the people in her city follow her. People are sharing it all over the place. And there's a couple things. Obviously, like you said, it was vulnerable, right? It was real, but it was also motivational. Mm-hmm. Right. It was inspirational, inspiring people to like, hey, this is what I'm doing to go overcome adversity in my life. And so there's a lot of things that worked, but it was just really just her being herself. That Instagram account now, I think, has 15 or 16,000 followers, and she gets a ton of referrals from agents all across Canada and the US, from people that are moving into her area. So it's legitimately turned into new business for her, but it all started with really that one post.
Wow. Yeah. So I would recommend people listening follow her, because I'm sure that just set her on fire. She's like, this content is incredible. So she got hooked on that kind of content.
Yeah.
Okay. What's number 5?
So number 5, continuing on that theme, day in the life, right? So sharing what you're doing for clients, what you're doing to help sell your listings, what you're doing when you're, taking buyers around in your car. If you take a new listing, doing like a Facebook Live walkthrough of the listing and talking about what you like about it and what's great about the neighborhood. So just, one of the perceptions that we've all battled as agents is the perception that we don't do enough for the commission, that we're overpaid, which if you're in real estate is a ridiculous notion. We know that's insane.
Right.
But the general public doesn't know that. But now we have access to a production studio called our iPhone, where we can really give people a sneak peek into what we're doing behind the scenes and break that perception. The problem is most agents are not giving people a sneak into their lives. And so the perception kind of keeps going that agents are just kind of tooling around in their Mercedes, talking loudly on a cell phone, like the guy from Entourage, and then going back to their bachelor pad.
Yeah. A couple things here I would throw in, kind of tip wise and just tactical wise. But, this is basically what you're talking about, is documenting your hustle.
Yeah.
And I tell my agents all the time, like, if you fail to document your hustle, you're basically gifting those commission opportunities to agents who are. Mm. And it's so easy. This is one of the easiest ones, I think, to do, because you go back to Gary Vee, who says you document, don't create. So you're just documenting what you're doing throughout the day. Sharon was talking about in a mastermind I saw him in San Diego in November, was talking about this. He said, just do a video in front of yourself, a selfie video in front of your listing, in front of your sign, but just have, for like the first little bit, point the camera at your sign, so that even if people don't watch your video on Facebook, you still get the branding. So it's like the first 3 seconds, you'll face it to your sign, then turn it around on you, and you got the sign maybe and the house behind you. So just little things like that that can make a really big difference. But there's a lot of agents listening that door knock, and maybe they door knock to advertise their open houses. That's something that agents don't. The typical agent's not going to door knock. The typical agent is certainly not going to door knock to promote an open house. So this is where you can set yourself apart like crazy. It's just
100%.
And it's little things. We've got agents.
Like it shows your work ethic.
Yeah, and we've got agents on my team that have to dial 3 hours a day. That's a minimum. They have that requirement on my team. And I'm like, get a video of yourself making calls with your CRM out and your headset on and your power dialing. You know, people love agents that are proactive and not just reactive. So that's one of my all-time favorites. All right, so what's the last one?
Okay, last one, and this is my favorite. Interviews with influencers. This is how I've done everything in business. Literally every success in my life right over the last 4 years is all directly tied to the fact that I interviewed influencers. And what that means for the agent on the street is interviewing other successful business owners in your area, interviewing high-ups in local government or schools, right? So principals, superintendents, things like that. The heads of local nonprofits. And then you can also get really, really strategic, and you can go after and interview the exact people that you want to be in a relationship with that you feel like can send you referrals. Financial advisors, CPAs, tax attorneys, probate attorneys, divorce attorneys, et cetera, et cetera. There's a gentleman in Marin County, north of San Francisco, that he only has about 2 different pillars of how he brings in new clients. One of them is expireds and the other one is probate. And the way that he generates probate leads is he just calls attorneys, builds relationships slowly over time. And then once they get comfortable with him, they realize he's kind of in the in crowd and he knows all the other probate attorneys in the city. They start sending him all of their deals, right? All their referrals. They could just be sending to Aunt Sally or someone that they're personally connected to, but he specializes in that type of thing. So once they figure out that he's in the in crowd, he knows all the other probate attorneys and he specializes in this sort of thing. This is what he does every day. Well, guess what? They're a lot more comfortable sending their referrals to him than they are to Aunt Sally, even though Aunt Sally might be their aunt, right? So there's things that we can do like that we can use interviews with people just to get into a relationship with the exact people that we want to be in a relationship with. But most agents don't think of it that way. They're thinking of, how do I get 1 or 2 more clients? They're not thinking about, hey, who's that person that could send me 20 referrals next year? You know, so that's one of the best ways I think to reach those people.
So I'm an agent, regardless of how many years I've been in the business or what production level I'm at, but I'm new to social media. And that's what the level playing field that we're on. Why are people going to accept an invitation to be on my Facebook Live video?
Well, we're in an interesting niche of time where that's super unique and most people are scared to do it. So people who are out there doing live videos or they're doing videos on Facebook, there's a level of respect that you get just by the fact that you're doing it, because most people go, oh, I could never do that. Even though, of course, they can. There's nothing stopping them from doing it. And the only thing that separates people who are good at it and people are not is just reps under the belt. How many times have you done it? It's just reps. And so they don't realize that and they don't think of it that way. So it's an interesting niche of time where it's very, very easy to reach most people. People in local government or local business owners are not used to getting invited to be interviewed. And so it is a potentially big deal to them. Now, granted, if you have a few thousand followers on your Facebook page, that gives you a little bit more credibility, but you don't necessarily need that. You could also say, hey, we're going to share with all of our office. It's going to go up on our broker page and my broker page has X number of followers. There's things that you can do that even if you're new to social media and you don't feel like you have the credibility to reach out, how can you borrow someone else's credibility? Go to your team, go to your brokerage, go to, find a local Facebook page that will agree to let you share that content to their audience because they need content too, right? So you mentioned earlier, like most cities have Facebook pages and maybe even Instagram accounts. If you were to do any piece of content and you were interviewing a local business owner, I guarantee you could reach out to the person who runs that Facebook page, that Instagram account, and they'd be willing to share your stuff. which gives you all the credibility you need. I don't care if you have 5 friends on Facebook and one of them is your mom. If you can get the city Facebook page to share your stuff, like that solves the problem.
Yeah, and I have rarely had somebody say no, even when I was just starting out. We now have a community page. I opted to go heavy on community page as opposed to a business page because every realtor has a business page. Yeah. And the community page just took off. It's got over 13,000 followers on it now. Nice. We have a little bitty small town, so of only like 24,000 people. So it's extremely popular, but I just reach out. It's very passive. I reach out through Facebook Messenger and just send out a bunch of invites and say, hey, I've been, you stroke their ego a little bit and say, I love your business, or I was in there and having a cheeseburger the other day and the service was great. I want to help you promote your business. I love, your vibe of your business. I love your culture. And I want to share that with the world. And people are really, really receptive to that. I think most people nowadays understand that it's not so much maybe the following of the person conducting the interview. It's just the technology itself has the way to reach the masses. It's really
and of course, the person being interviewed is going to share it because it's unique for them. Like they're not doing this every day. So you get access to their audience because they probably have an audience. They have friends on Facebook. They have a Facebook page maybe that has some few hundred or a few thousand followers, and they're probably not doing anything for them. So once they share some content, then that puts it in front of their audience and it puts you in front of their audience, right? So it just, to me, it's a win-win all the way around. Everybody wins in that scenario, both audiences and both of the people that are doing the interview and being interviewed. Everybody gets content, everybody wins, everybody gets more exposure.
I was at an event and I got to hear Mark Roberge speak, who's the author of the Sales Acceleration Formula. He worked for HubSpot for a while, helped it get to be really, really successful. But it was interesting during his talk. He really said the number one thing we could be doing as real estate agents to grow our business is to interview the local influencers in our market. That was like the big primary bullet point that he wanted to hammer home with us. And he basically just coined it as journalistic marketing. And
that's a great way to put it.
Yeah. And so here's my thing. I wanted to point out that you made a really good point about the phone being the production studio. So we've kind of gotten rid of that limiting belief or excuse that you got to have all this fancy equipment and you got to have a videographer and all that crap. That's just bull. So we've done away with that. But I can't tell you how many times I have a slightly different strategy with, laying out a social media plan. I just use the Eddie formula, which maybe you've heard of, which a lot of people use. But I don't think, no matter how, this is very simple what you've laid out. And what I lay out is also very simple. But as we wrap up here, what would be, because I just feel like that as an industry, somebody could go to YouTube and get exactly the same information we're talking about today. It's all out there. We don't have an information problem. We have an implementation problem.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice for agents to get them off their butts and start implementing your 6-step strategy?
Yeah, 2 things. Number one, just understand that if you're hesitant and it freaks you out a little bit to try this stuff, just know that is never going to change. The people that are successful push through that and just accept it. They embrace that kind of freak out stage. My mentor, I was hanging out with a mentor of mine a couple of weeks ago, and he reminded me of how much I was freaking out before my first webinar. This is like 4 years ago. I think it was my first webinar was with someone like Matthew Ferry or Michael Mayer or something like that. Like it was huge. You know what I'm saying? Like I got thrown into the fire and did webinars right off the bat. And I'd never done them before, right? The interesting thing is that I don't remember that. I literally don't remember that stage. Now I can go from interview to interview. Like I'm literally back to back to back to back, either interviewing or being interviewed all morning. I rolled out of bed this morning and didn't give it a second thought. I don't remember the freak out stage. So just for anybody who is freaked out by this stuff, just understand that you'll get through it and you probably won't even remember being freaked out by it. And then you're going to be that person who doesn't give it a second thought and everybody else marvels at and goes, how do you do that? How do you just hop on Facebook Live and just do a live video whenever you feel like it? It's all on the other side of that freak out stage. And the second thing is just to start small. It's really, if we allow it to, it can get really overwhelming. And I love Gary Vee and what he stands for and what he preaches and all that stuff. But what agents take away from guys like Gary Vee is that I need to be everywhere all the time. And that's not true. Right now, you're invisible. So doing something and starting small is way better than doing nothing and feeling guilty about it. Right. So stop feeling guilty and stop feeling guilty for not doing everything and just commit to one thing. So here's what I would encourage people to do. Number one, if you want to dip your toe into Facebook Live, guess what? You don't have to make it public, right? So when you start a Facebook Live, you can change the setting and you can set it to private, like only me. So literally nobody sees it. Or you can set it to only friends or family, or you could even create a group of just your agent friends. So get some friends that are also interested in doing this, and you can actually set it up so that when you go live on Facebook, only that handful of people sees it. Right. So you don't have to. So lessen, like take down the freak out factor, and then just commit to something small, but commit to it 100%. Don't commit to doing, 2 hours of Facebook Live next week. Just commit to doing one short video every day for 30 days and see how it feels. And then decide, okay, at that point, I will decide whether I'm going to continue. But I'm not going to do anything else. And I'm going to cut myself a deal, and I'm not going to worry about anything else. I'm not going to feel guilty about anything else, because I'm doing this one thing and I'm making progress in this one area, and I'm 100% committed to this one area. So I think that those two things together, I think will help a lot of people.
And in order to execute, this implementation strategy, you're going to have to put that on your calendar. You said shoot 1 hour of video a day. Was that it? Or one video a day?
Yeah, just one very quick video a day.
One very quick video a day. So you're going to have to put that on your calendar to make sure it gets done. And I think that's true. A really important part of this process. All right. So if people want to get in touch with you, you have anything you want to plug? So I want to hire you to help me produce a podcast, or I want to, learn more about EXP. How can I get in touch with you?
Yeah, probably the best way is just to go find our podcast, Real Estate Uncensored. So if you have an iPhone, go to Apple Podcasts. If you have any kind of device, you can go to Spotify or Stitcher if you're on Android device. And for anyone that's in the listening audience who's in real estate, just go listen to Real Estate Uncensored. You'll enjoy it. You'll love it. We have a great time talking with some of the most influential people in the business. And then if you're curious about podcasting, you can go to pursuingresults.com. That's my website for the podcast production business.
Well, thank you so much. This has been awesome. I know you're super busy, so making time for us and the little people out there is much appreciated. So anything we can do for you, please let us know. And Matt Johnson, thank you again for your time.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Impact Agent Podcast. If you like the show and got something out of it, please like the Impact Agent Podcast on Facebook and rate and review the show on iTunes or anywhere you listen to podcasts. This really helps us grow the show and helps other agents find it. Please share it with your friends and coworkers as well. You want us to deliver the show to you via email every week? Then email me at jason@impactagentuniversity.com and we'll send you the show every week. Please let us know what you think about the show, what you like, what you don't, or possibly make a suggestion about a topic you want to hear. Email me at jason@impactagentuniversity.com or leave us a message on Facebook at Impact Agent Podcast. Until next week, everybody be productive, safe, and happy, and always keep learning. This podcast is produced by Johnny Gwynn at Deep Fried Studios in Mobile, Alabama, and is paid for and powered by ImpactAgentUniversity.com.